Hello there, John here. Welcome back to PC Bytes. In this episode, we're going to take a deeper dive into Precision Boost Overdrive, or PBO. We're going to utilize curve optimizers, we're going to boost frequency, and we're going to test the limits of EDC to see if we can wring a little bit more performance out of our rig. Stay tuned. In my first video on PBO, I mentioned another YouTube video that did an excellent job in demonstrating how to use this AMD feature. I've linked that video again in the description and would highly recommend watching it if you want to get a better understanding of how to do overclocking generally and how to fine-tune Precision Boost Overdrive specifically. To recap, after enabling PBO, I saw some improvement, did a video on that, kind of charted that. I then tried ASUS's APE, which stands for ASUS Performance Enhancement. Unfortunately, I did not see my performance enhanced as the results didn't materially change performance. I then tried PBO FMax Enhancer, another ASUS specific tweak, but then as I was running through the tests, I found out that that tweak does not work with Ryzen 5000 series chips, and after seeing my performance actually deteriorate, I nixed a video on that one. So I decided to come back to Precision Boost Overdrive and see what would happen if I further tweak some of the settings manually. And I got to say, I'm not an overclocker by nature or by experience or by practice, but watching Boss Mang's video and seeing other videos on YouTube on overclocking, I at least wasn't overly intimidated not to give it a try. The only thing I would recommend is make sure you take your time, you track what changes you do, you test your changes diligently to make sure they're stable, and then you have the ability to undo those changes if you find that you are losing stability. Because otherwise, if you do change a bunch of stuff, you do run a risk of making your system unusable. So following Boss Mang's methodology, I started with the curve optimizers and offset them by 20, and then did a series of stress tests to make sure that the system was stable. Once I confirmed that the system was stable, I did run through my performance tests again, and I saw some improvement. 3D Mark and Premiere Pro both improved modestly, while Blender improved a bit more dramatically. With just PBO, Blender was between a 5 and a 6% improvement, while with the curve optimizers, the improvement was between 7 and 8%. Next, I boosted CPU frequency by 200 megahertz. Again, ran a whole series of stress tests to make sure the system was stable. Otherwise, I would have dialed that 200 megahertz back down. But everything was stable, everything worked well. So then I ran through the performance benchmarks again. This time I saw a little improvement in Civ 6, but Premiere Pro and 3D Mark and Blender were all basically the same. So I didn't really see much difference from that. Lastly, I then started boosting EDC and settled on an EDC number of 210. Started at 190, I went to 200, went to 210, even tried 220, but I didn't like what I was seeing at 220, so I settled on 210. Again, went through all the stability tests to make sure, all the stress tests to make sure that the system was stable. I guess you could call them stability tests. And then ran through the performance tests again. Taken all together, I saw some meaningful improvement. Civ 6 improved by just over 3%, 3D Mark improved by 9.5%, and Blender improved by 7.6 and 8.2% respectively for the two different tests. And meanwhile, Premiere Pro was just under a 7% improvement. So all of these results were better than just using generic PBO, and I would hardly recommend the additional tweaking, especially if you're doing any kind of production work. That 7% improvement on Premiere Pro can end up saving you a lot of time if you're doing a lot of production work that does take time to begin with. So I appreciate you watching. Thanks. If you're finding these videos useful, please consider liking and subscribing, and I hope to see you in the next one.